I stepped out of the hospital into autumn air, my chest still throbbing beneath fresh bandages, and discovered my entire world had been systematically dismantled. My hands trembled as I climbed the driveway. A moving truck sat in my drive, its massive doors stretched open like a predator's mouth. Two men in work clothes hauled my grandfather's mahogany desk, the one built in 1952, worth more than my vehicle, down the front steps with mechanical precision. This wasn't rushed. This was orchestrated. I paid the taxi driver with shaking fingers and pushed myself toward the chaos, my recovering heart hammering against cracked ribs. The jewelry box felt impossibly fragile in my grip, $800 for a gold pendant I'd promised to Catherine before surgery. When she'd sat beside me in the hospital bed, her worried hand gripping mine so tightly I thought she might never let go. Catherine emerged from the doorway carrying a cardboard box. Our eyes locked. She froze mid-step, the box tilting dangerously. Through the open flaps I glimpsed picture frames, my reading glasses, the coffee mug my late wife gave me years ago. Dad. Her voice was strange, distant. You're alive? Not welcome home. Not thank goodness you made it. Just that peculiar inflection on alive, as though my survival was somehow inconvenient, unwelcome. What's happening? I moved toward the steps, each breath a battle. Why is everything being removed from my house? We thought you wouldn't survive the surgery, she said flatly, factually, as though explaining the weather. We started clearing things out. The words didn't connect. I'd called her this morning from the hospital discharge office. Told her I was coming home. She'd known. Marcus appeared behind her, his bulk filling the entire doorway. My laptop was tucked under one arm. 10 years of research notes, personal files, irreplaceable work. He looked at me the way you'd regard an unexpected repair bill. Annoyed, put out. Well, old man, he said coldly, your time's up anyway. This house swallows resources. You don't need all this space alone. He didn't step aside. Through the open door behind them, my living room had been gutted. Empty rectangles marked where paintings had hung for decades. The antique bookshelf, gone. The Persian rug I'd purchased during my marriage, gone. Even the light fixtures had been stripped. I tried to move forward. My chest seized, sharp and vicious, the surgical wound pulling. I reached for the porch railing and missed. The jewelry box slipped from my grip. It hit the concrete and popped open. The pendant spilled out, gold catching the late afternoon sun, gleaming between us. Catherine glanced down at it. For one heartbeat, one suspended moment, I saw recognition flicker across her face. She understood. She knew I'd kept my promise despite everything. Then her gaze drifted past it, dismissive, cold, and returned to study me with calculating eyes. We'll explain everything inside, she said, her voice dripping with false concern. You shouldn't be standing outside so soon after surgery. Come rest, but her eyes weren't inviting me to rest. They were calculating how to manage this complication, my survival. Marcus still blocked the doorway. His grip on my laptop was proprietary, possessive, like spoils claimed in battle. Catherine, I said, my voice emerging rough and hollow. I bought this for you. I promised I couldn't finish. Standing there with the pendant glinting abandoned on the concrete, I finally understood. Everything she'd whispered in that hospital room, the worried expressions, the tender hand-holding, the tearful pleas, had been performance art. She'd held my hand and looked terrified because that's what daughters do when they're mentally dividing their father's estate. Come on, Dad, she urged, before you collapse. Marcus's mouth curved into something that wasn't a smile. Yeah, old man. Wouldn't want another cardiac event right here on the driveway. The threat was subtle but absolutely unmistakable. I forced myself to breathe. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then I left the pendant where it lay and walked toward my own front door. EQ, house echoed when I stepped past Marcus. Not the comfortable echo of high ceilings and hardwood, but the hollow, haunting sound of complete absence. My footsteps rang out against bare wood where the Persian rug had been. The emptiness felt deliberate, cruel. The living room stopped me cold. They'd annihilated it. A single folding chair, the kind from discount stores, sat abandoned in the middle of the space. Everything else was erased. The bookshelf that had housed 3 decades of academic collections stood skeletal, its shelves stripped bare. The walls showed pale ghosts where paintings had hung since my wife's death. The heavy velvet curtains she'd chosen herself were gone, leaving windows naked and exposed to harsh light. My legs simply gave out. I grabbed the folding chair. It bent beneath my weight, flimsy and cheap. "Dad, sit down before you fall." Catherine's hands gripped my arms, guiding me into the chair. Her touch felt possessive rather than comforting. "Where are the photo albums?" I demanded. "Where are your mother's photographs?" "Safely packed," she said reasonably. "We're not monsters. Everything's in storage." Storage. I understood immediately. "You mean sold?" Her face flickered. Just for an instant the mask slipped. Then she recovered, moving to the kitchen counter and returning with a thick manila folder, colorful tabs marking specific pages. "We found a wonderful facility," she said, laying the folder on my lap. "Peaceful Horizons Senior Living. Beautiful grounds. Excellent reviews. All you have to do is sign a few papers." I opened it. Legal documents printed on expensive paper. My name appeared repeatedly. "Marcus Chen hereby agrees. Marcus Chen transfers ownership. Marcus Chen acknowledges." "The house needs to be sold to pay for it," Catherine continued, her voice rehearsed like she'd practiced this speech countless times. "The market's strong right now. You'll have everything you need at Peaceful Horizons." Marcus moved behind my chair. His presence at my back felt like a threat. "The doctor said you shouldn't be making major decisions right now," he offered. "We're handling it." I flipped through the pages without truly reading them. Transfer of title, power of attorney, asset liquidation. Everything was prepared in advance. Tabbed, organized, waiting for my signature like a trap. "How much did the surgery cost?" I asked. Catherine's expression shifted. Now she was the wounded party, the sacrificing daughter. $43,000, Dad, we paid it. Glenn took out a loan against his truck. We nearly lost everything to keep you alive. She touched my shoulder, a gesture calculated to seem comforting. The least you can do is help us recover. I looked up at her. The insurance covered 90%. I saw the hospital bills. You paid $4,000, not $43,000. Silence. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "We've been supporting you for 3 years, she said, her voice hardening. "Your utilities, your property taxes, your medications. I've been paying your rent," I replied quietly. "Your car insurance, your credit cards. That's what parents do. We take care of our children." Her tone turned sharp. "They sacrifice for them." Marcus's hand landed on my shoulder, heavy and deliberate. "Sign the papers, old man, or we'll have you declared incompetent. The doctors will back us up. You just had major surgery. How's that heart feeling? You look pretty shaky." My left hand moved to my pocket. The motion felt natural, unnoticed. My fingers found my phone, unlocked it through touch alone, a pattern I'd perfected years ago. I could navigate the screen without looking. Catherine was still talking, listing her sacrifices, explaining her supposed devotion. Marcus's fingers dug into my shoulder like a physical threat. With my thumb, I typed carefully, one-handed, the phone hidden in my lap. "You were right. Begin acting according to plan." I sent it to the contacts saved only as RF. When I looked up, I felt something shift inside me, a hardness settling around my eyes, in the set of my jaw. "I need to think," I said quietly. "I'll review these with someone qualified." "Someone qualified?" Catherine's voice rose. "Like who? You don't trust your own daughter now?" The phone felt warm in my pocket. The message was already sent. The plan was activated. I really looked at her then, at the woman who'd held my hand in the hospital while mentally calculating my estate value, who'd packed my wife's photographs into boxes, who'd rehearsed this entire conversation, prepared these documents, organized this moving crew, all while I was unconscious in a recovery ward. "No, Catherine," I said. "I don't." I told them I needed prescriptions. Technically true, but what I really needed was distance, space to think, escape from the walls that were closing in. "I'll drive you," Catherine offered, already reaching for her keys. "You shouldn't be behind the wheel so soon after surgery." "I've been cleared," I said, keeping my voice level. "I need to do this myself." Marcus moved toward the front door, blocking the frame like a wall. "Maybe you should listen to your daughter." I looked at him steadily. "Move aside, Marcus, unless you want to add unlawful restraint to your list of problems." The specific legal terminology made him hesitate. He stepped back. I walked past both of them, feeling their eyes bore into my back like weapons. My car sat at the curb where I'd left it this morning, a lifetime ago. My hands shook as I started the engine, but I managed. I drove slowly, following every traffic rule, my mind racing ahead of the careful movements of my body. At the corner where I'd first picked them up 3 years ago, memories assaulted me. Their belongings had filled my trunk and back seat. Everything they owned after Marcus's restaurant venture collapsed into ruin. "This is temporary, Pops," he'd said, loading boxes. "Just until my next venture launches." 3 months tops. I'd believed him because I'd wanted to. "Your family. Stay as long as you need." Catherine had hugged me tight. "You're the best dad. We'll make it up to you." But the months had stretched into years. Catherine's fingers learning which accounts held what money. Marcus's failed ventures draining my savings by thousands. Catherine suggesting I add her name to my accounts just in case something happens. The cash missing from my wallet. Her concerned voice suggesting I was becoming forgetful, unreliable, possibly developing memory issues. Then, 2 months before surgery, I'd been on the stairs when their voices carried up from the kitchen. "If he doesn't survive the operation, this house is ours. Free and clear," Catherine had said. "And if he does?" Marcus asked. Then we moved to Plan B. He's old, weak. How long can he really hold out? I'd stood frozen for 10 minutes, listening to them plan my obsolescence like I was an outdated appliance. The next day, I'd sought out Robert Finch. Now, driving through Portland, I could feel the weight of that preparation. The notary's office was in a converted brownstone on Morrison. Inside, everything was clinical and efficient. A professional woman processed my documents without commentary. Eviction notices for Catherine and Marcus. Amendments to account access. Medical power of attorney, excluding my daughter. She stamped each page with decisive finality. "These will be delivered tomorrow morning," she said, sliding them into pre-addressed envelopes. I nodded. The battle had truly begun. My last stop was Portland Elder Support Services. The building was warm, bright, filled with people who clearly cared about their work. At the reception desk, a woman in her early 60s looked up with a genuine smile. "Can I help you?" "I'm not entirely sure what I need," I admitted. "My surgeon recommended I come by." "I'm Margaret Cooper," she said, coming around the desk and gesturing toward a private office. "Let's talk." Her office was comfortable without being condescending. No cartoon posters, no oversized furniture. We discussed post-surgery needs, medication schedules, support systems. I answered mechanically until she asked about family. "My daughter lives with me," I said carefully. "Is she supportive?" I must have hesitated too long because Margaret's eyes sharpened. "May I see your hands, Mr. Wallace?" I extended them reluctantly. She took my wrists gently, turning them to catch the light. The bruises from Marcus's grip were still visible, dark, finger-shaped marks. "Did someone grab you?" The question was professional, not accusatory. "My son-in-law," I found myself saying. "The day before my surgery. We had a disagreement about my care. Margaret didn't gasp or overreact. She simply made notes, then slid a business card across the desk. On the back, she'd written a phone number in her own handwriting. "If you need anything, and I mean anything, call me." Day or night, I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't offering pity. She was offering alliance. "Thank you. I haven't told anyone about this." I felt ashamed. "You have nothing to be ashamed of," she said firmly. "They do." I returned to the house after dark, avoided all conversation, and slept fitfully in the guest room. Morning came both too soon and not soon enough. I made breakfast for 3, knowing it might be the last civil meal we'd ever share. Eggs, toast, coffee. Each action deliberate, controlled. When Catherine entered the kitchen, I slid a mug toward her without looking up. Morning, Marcus appeared behind her, equally wary. I waited until they were seated. "I've been thinking about what you said," I began quietly. "You're right. This house is too big for me now." The words tasted like ash. "If we're going to sell it, let's do it properly. I've called an appraiser." Catherine's face transformed. "Dad, that's really mature. I'm so glad you're being reasonable." What she heard was capitulation. I saw her exchange a triumphant glance with Marcus. At 9:30, the appraiser arrived. Karen was professional, efficient, moving through the house with practiced ease. She photographed architectural details, measured rooms, made careful notes. Catherine and Marcus followed her like eager salespeople, pointing out features: the original crown molding, the hardwood floors, the renovated bathroom. In the dining room, Karen paused at the window overlooking the garden. "Beautiful property, excellent condition, prime location." She tapped her tablet, calculating. "In this market, you're looking at $850,000. Possibly more." Catherine's eyes went wide. Marcus actually smiled. That was substantially more than they'd anticipated. I drank my coffee and said nothing. At 10 Rue, the knock came, sharp, official. "I'll get it," I said, moving to the door before Catherine could follow. The courier held out a tablet. "Registered mail for Marcus Wallace." I signed, accepted the thick envelope. Behind me, footsteps. Catherine, curious. Marcus, hovering. I used a kitchen knife to open the seal. Inside were dense official documents, stamped with a law firm's letterhead. I read them silently, my face revealing nothing. Catherine's patience broke. She snatched the papers from my hands. Her voice rose as she read aloud. "The property known as 2847 Laurelhurst Boulevard is held in irrevocable family trust. Marcus Wallace maintains lifetime tenancy. Legal title transfers to designated beneficiary only upon death of primary tenant." She looked up, face draining of color. "What is this?" "The trust my parents established when they bought this house in 1968, I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I'm surprised you didn't know about it. You never asked. You just assumed." Another knock interrupted her response. I opened the door to Robert Finch, briefcase in hand, wearing a charcoal suit that meant business. "Good morning," he said. "I'm Robert Finch, Mr. Wallace's attorney. I'm here to ensure this process proceeds legally and clearly." He stepped inside without waiting for invitation. Glenn found his voice. "Nobody invited you. This is a family matter." Finch set his briefcase on the dining table with decisive finality. "Mr. Peterson, this stopped being a family matter when you began liquidating my client's assets without authorization. It's now a legal matter." He opened the briefcase, removing additional documents. "You and Ms. Wallace have 30 days to vacate these premises. These are the rules. You're receiving legal notice as required under Oregon law. That's your eviction notice." Karen, the appraiser, stood frozen near the stairs. "I think I have everything I need," she said awkwardly. "I'll send you the full report, Mr. Wallace." She practically fled. Catherine turned on me, face contorted. "After everything we've done for you, you're destroying your own family? We gave up our lives. You've been here spending my money," I said quietly. "How dare you? I'm your daughter." Her voice rose to a shriek. "I know," I replied. "That's what makes this hurt." Marcus stepped forward, fists clenched. "You think you're smart, old man? This isn't over. We'll have you declared incompetent. You're not well enough to—" Finch stepped smoothly between us, hand raised. "Mr. Peterson, I'm a witness now. Any physical threat or contact with my client will result in immediate police involvement and a restraining order. I'd strongly advise you to step back." Marcus did, but his face promised violence deferred, not abandoned. Catherine swept her arm across the counter. My coffee mug shattered on the floor. "Fine, we'll leave. But you'll regret this. You'll die alone in this empty house and no one will care. No one will even find your body for days." I straightened my spine, looked directly at her. I'd rather die alone with dignity than live surrounded by people waiting for me to die so they can sell everything I've worked for. Silence. Catherine had no response. The next 10 days crawled past like geological time. Catherine and Marcus stayed mostly in their room, communicating through closed doors and whispered phone calls. I caught Marcus photographing me twice, once struggling with a jar lid, once searching for my reading glasses. They were documenting something, building a case I didn't yet understand. I discovered their strategy by accident. The printer in my study was running while Marcus was out. Curiosity pulled me toward it. The pages in the output tray were still warm. Petition for guardianship and conservatorship in the matter of Marcus Wallace. He had alleged incapacitated person. My coffee mug lowered slowly to the desk. I read faster, my eyes widening with each paragraph. Post-surgical cognitive decline, erratic behavior, unable to manage financial affairs. Witness statements from neighbors about my confusion and memory problems. If they couldn't have the house through eviction, they'd seize it by taking control of me. I photographed every page with shaking hands, then returned them exactly as I'd found them. The hearing was scheduled for 10 days out. 10 days to prove I was competent or lose everything, not just the house, but my autonomy, my decisions, my life itself. Over the next few days, Marcus's provocations became systematic. At dinner, he'd make comments designed to trip me up. "What was your late wife's name again? You've mentioned it, but I forget." "Oh, wait, do you forget?" Always holding his phone, always recording. He moved my medication bottles, then asked if I'd taken my pills. When I couldn't find them immediately, he smiled that smile. "Getting forgetful, Pops?" I caught him recording once, demanded he stop. He just smiled wider. "It's my phone. I can hold it if I want. You're building a case that I'm incompetent. Why would I do that unless you're the one who's worried there's evidence?" I wanted to rage at him, to throw him out bodily, but that's exactly what he wanted. An emotional outburst on camera, evidence of instability. So I stayed calm, which felt like swallowing poison. The worst was Mrs. Patterson. I saw her pulling weeds in her garden, avoiding my gaze. "Helen came by last week," she said finally. "She seemed so worried about you. I thought I was helping." My chest tightened. "What did you tell her?" "About the time you asked me about my roses twice in one morning." Mrs. Patterson looked guilty. "Helen said you'd done that kind of thing a lot. Forgetting conversations. Repeating yourself. She asked me to write a statement." I remembered that morning clearly. I'd asked about her garden. Then my phone rang, Finch calling with urgent information. 10 minutes later, distracted by what he'd told me, I'd asked again. Not dementia. Just a busy morning. But she'd made it sound worse than it was. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I stared at the guardianship petition pages on my phone. Each alleged incident had a grain of truth stretched into a lie. The jar I couldn't open. I just had sternum surgery. The forgotten glasses. I'd been tired, not demented. But how do you prove you're not incompetent? Margaret's business card felt heavy in my wallet. I stared at it for 20 minutes before I dialed. She answered on the second ring. "Marcus, what's wrong?" Just hearing her voice steadied me. "I'm sorry to call so late. Helen filed a guardianship petition. She's trying to have me declared incompetent. The hearing is in 10 days. If she wins, she controls everything," Margaret said. "Your money, your medical decisions, where you live. But she's not going to win. I'm coming over. It's 2 in the morning. I'm already getting dressed." She arrived 28 minutes later, wearing a coat over pajamas, carrying a thermos of tea and a notepad. She sat across from me like she'd lived in my kitchen forever, poured tea into 2 mugs with quiet confidence. "Tell me everything on that petition, every incident, every witness," she said. "We're going to document the truth of each one." We worked until dawn. For every claim in Helen's petition, Margaret helped me find the reality beneath it. She wrote everything in careful notes, asked sharp questions, found the holes in their narrative. "What if they're right?" I said finally as light filtered through the kitchen window. "I do forget things. I'm not as sharp as I was. You just had major heart surgery," Margaret replied. You're recovering. That's not incompetence. That's being human. She told me about her own divorce, how her ex-husband tried to paint her as unstable because she'd cried at mediation just days after her mother's death. They take your vulnerability and weaponize it. They make you doubt yourself. But you're not incompetent. You're recovering, and that's not the same thing. She stood, gathering her coat. At the door, she took my hand briefly. You're not fighting this alone anymore. After she left, I sat in the quiet house, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not quite hope, but the possibility of it. Margaret moved with impressive speed. By afternoon, she'd arranged a cognitive evaluation with Dr. Lisa Chen, a psychologist specializing in elder competency assessments. She helped me document every incident in Helen's petition, finding truth beneath exaggeration. 3 days later, I sat in Dr. Chen's office. The space smelled like lavender and leather, designed to be calming. My hands still shook. Dr. Chen was thorough. She placed cards face down, asked me to remember their order. I studied them carefully, got most right, missed one. Was that enough to fail? Later, she asked me to solve a practical problem. If you need medication 4 times daily, 6 hours apart, starting at 8 a.m., when are your doses? 8 a.m., 2 p.m., 8 p.m., 2 a.m. I calculated aloud. She nodded, wrote something. I realized she was assessing my process, not just my results. Mr. Wallace, you missed one of the card sequences. How do you feel about that? Frustrated. I usually have a good memory, but not since the surgery. Some days are sharper than others. I write things down now. Use phone reminders. That's called compensation strategy, she said, leaning forward slightly. It's actually a sign of good cognitive function. Competent people recognize their limitations and adapt. Incompetent people don't recognize they need help. After 2 hours, she closed her tablet. Mr. Wallace, you show normal age-related cognitive changes and temporary post-surgical effects, but you are absolutely competent to manage your affairs. I'll have my report ready in 2 days. I nearly wept with relief. While I was being evaluated, Margaret went to my house. I'd given her a key to pick up documents Finch needed. Catherine and Marcus were out. She gathered papers from my office, working quickly. Then she heard the front door. Margaret froze. Marcus's footsteps in the hallway. She silently closed the office door, leaving it cracked just slightly, her heart hammering. Through the opening, she saw him pass, phone to his ear. His voice carried clearly into the kitchen. Yeah, the guardianship thing is taking too long. If the judge doesn't give us control... His voice dropped, but she could still hear. I don't know, man. Old guy's got a heart condition. Maybe he has another episode. A bad one this time. Nobody would question it after surgery. Natural causes and all that. We'd have the house cleared within weeks. Margaret's blood stopped moving. She slowly pulled out her phone, opened voice memo, pressed record. Her hands shook. She captured 2 minutes before Marcus ended the call and left. She waited 10 minutes before moving. When she picked me up from Dr. Chen's office, I knew immediately something was terribly wrong. She was pale, her hands tight on the steering wheel. What happened? Not here. She drove to a public park, pulled into an empty lot. She held out her phone. Listen to this. Marcus's voice filled the car, describing another episode, natural causes, clearing the house within weeks. I wanted to deny it. He doesn't mean that. He's talking hypothetically, venting. Listen to it again, Margaret said, her voice cutting through my denial. Maybe he has another episode. He's not predicting, Marcus. He's planning. Your own daughter, Helen, knows about this, or Glenn lives in your house. He has access to your medications, your food, your environment. She looked directly at me. We have to assume you're at risk. The park trees swayed in the wind. I couldn't feel anything. This doesn't happen in real life, I thought. But Margaret's face told me it absolutely does. We drove to a security company. By afternoon, we'd purchased small Wi-Fi-enabled cameras legal to install in common areas of my own home. That evening, while Catherine and Marcus were out, Margaret and I worked. She stood on a ladder, positioning a camera in a smoke detector housing. Clear view of the kitchen, she confirmed, checking the feed on her phone. In the living room, I placed one inside the bookshelf, angled toward the couch. I feel like I'm setting a trap in my own home, I said. You're not trapping them, Margaret replied. You're protecting yourself. These cameras don't create evidence. They reveal truth. That evening, I forced myself to review my financial records. 3 months ago, a new credit card had been opened in my name. Application date, when I was hospitalized before surgery. Over $45,000 charged. Designer clothes, jewelry, electronics. Helen's signature on every delivery confirmation. My hand shook as I photographed every receipt. I called Finch, put him on speaker for Margaret to hear. $45,000 opened while you were incapacitated. This is textbook identity theft and elder financial abuse. They'd prosecute my own daughter, I asked. Sterling, she forged your signature and stole tens of thousands. Yes, they'd prosecute. The question is, do you want them to? I looked at Margaret. She shook her head slightly. Not yet. Wait until the guardianship hearing, I told Finch. If they claim I'm incompetent, we show the judge their real motive. They're thieves, not concerned family. It destroys their credibility completely. The hearing day arrived. I dressed before dawn, rehearsed my testimony with Finch one final time, and met Margaret in the courthouse parking lot. She squeezed my hand once. You've got this. The courthouse marble felt cold under my feet. Each step echoed through hallways lined with courtroom doors. Judge Patricia Morrison entered, mid-50s, reading glasses perched on her nose, radiating authority. Catherine took the stand first, performing her role brilliantly. She spoke about finding me confused after surgery, unable to manage medications, forgetting conversations within minutes. Her attorney guided her through prepared testimony while she dabbed at her eyes with calculated tears. He called out for his wife at night, she said, voice breaking perfectly, asking where she was. She's been gone for 6 years. He doesn't remember. A lie, delivered with such practiced grief that I wondered if she believed it herself. Marcus testified next, presenting his phone recordings. Out of context, they were damning. Me struggling with a pill bottle, searching for glasses, pausing mid-sentence. The clips were brief, edited, manipulated into a narrative of decline. Then Finch stood. He approached the bench with a thick folder, handed copies to the judge and Helen's attorney. Ms. Wallace claims concern for her father's financial management, Finch said. Let's examine the records. He highlighted withdrawal after withdrawal. $3,000 in June. The memo reads, rent payment. Your father paid your rent. This $8,000 cruise in April. This $4,500 handbag in March. All from his accounts, while you claim he's incompetent. Laser pointer traced the money flow across a projected screen. Red circles highlighting each charge. Arrows showing the systematic pattern from my savings to Catherine's spending. 3 years of calculated drainage. Catherine's attorney's confidence visibly deflated. Dr. Chen testified via video link. Professional, authoritative, unshakable. Mr. Wallace demonstrates full cognitive competence. He shows excellent insight into his own limitations. He uses memory aids, asks clarifying questions. These are signs of competence, not incompetence. When I took the stand, I felt surprisingly calm. Finch asked straightforward questions. I answered clearly, meeting the judge's eyes directly. Why didn't you sign the documents your daughter presented? Because they were prepared without my input. I wanted legal review. That's prudent, not incompetent. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Wallace, do you want your daughter to have guardianship over you? I looked at Catherine, really looked at her. No, Your Honor. 3 years ago, I welcomed my daughter into my home when she needed help. She repaid that kindness by treating me like an ATM. Now she wants legal control over my life. I want my autonomy restored and my daughter out of my house. The judge removed her reading glasses. The petition for guardianship is denied. Mr. Wallace shows full capacity to manage his affairs. She looked at Catherine. Furthermore, the financial evidence suggests this petition may have been motivated by exploitation rather than genuine concern. Ms. Wallace will cooperate with the existing eviction notice. Any further legal harassment may result in sanctions. The gavel struck once. Final. That evening, Margaret brought wine and takeout from my favorite restaurant. We ate at the kitchen table where we'd strategized through so many nights. After dinner, she stood and put on music from my record collection. John Coltrane, gentle and smoky. She extended her hand. We danced slowly in the kitchen, barely moving, her head near my shoulder, my hand on her waist. Neither of us spoke. The moment felt fragile, like naming it might break it. When the song ended, we stood close, still holding each other. "Sterling," she said softly. "What happens now?" I realized she wasn't asking about Catherine and Marcus. By Thursday morning, I sat in the police station. I'd rehearsed what to say, but when Detective Morrison asked me to start from the beginning, the words came harder than expected. I need to report identity theft. My daughter opened a credit card in my name without my knowledge. Detective Morrison was thorough, professional, her sharp eyes having seen countless families destroy each other over money. She photographed each document, credit card statements, forged applications, hospital records proving I was unconscious when it was filed. That afternoon, 2 detectives arrived at my house. Catherine was packing boxes. When Detective Morrison introduced herself and asked Catherine to come to the station, Catherine's face drained completely. "About what?" she demanded. "Credit card fraud and identity theft." Catherine turned to me, eyes filled with venom. "You called the police on me. Your own daughter. You stole $45,000 while I was unconscious," I said quietly. "That's not doing something for me. That's doing something to me." An hour later, Marcus grabbed his keys and fled. But 20 miles outside Portland, a traffic stop for a broken taillight revealed outstanding warrants, unpaid fines, a missed DUI court date in Washington, probation violations. He was arrested on the roadside, transported back in handcuffs. While this unfolded, Finch was reviewing camera footage more carefully. He found something that made him call immediately. "We need to meet. Now." He closed his office door, opened his laptop, turned the screen toward me. "This is from 3 days before the guardianship hearing." He pressed play. Catherine and Marcus stood in my kitchen, unaware of the camera. Marcus's voice. "If this guardianship thing doesn't work, there are other options. The old man's on heart medication, a double dose. Maybe skip a few days, then overload. It would look like he got confused with his pills. Catherine, I don't want to know the details. Marcus, I'm just saying he's 70, bad heart, just had surgery. If something happens, nobody questions it. Natural causes, Catherine. If it happens, it happens. Just make it look natural. Catherine, we'll be wealthy, Marcus. The house, his accounts, everything. The video ended. I sat motionless, staring at the frozen frame showing my daughter's face, calculating, emotionless, discussing my death like selecting paint colors. "That's my daughter," I whispered, "planning to kill me for money." "Sterling, this is conspiracy to commit murder," Finch said quietly. "I'm required to report it to police. Do it." "Call them now." He made the call immediately. I sat in his office chair staring at nothing. For weeks I'd been angry about the theft, the lies, the manipulation. But this wasn't greed or selfishness. This was casual planning of patricide, discussed with the emotional weight of choosing groceries. If it happens, it happens. The tears came then, not from fear, I was safe now, but from grief. Profound, soul-crushing grief. Not for the daughter I'd thought I had, but for the family I'd imagined building after my wife died. For 3 years I've welcomed them believing Helen's smiles were genuine. Within hours, Catherine and Marcus were arrested. Conspiracy to commit murder. Fraud. Identity theft. They were denied bail, deemed flight risks. Helen's first restitution check arrived weeks later, in $450, the first of 60 payments. I endorsed it over to the Portland Elder Advocacy Fund and felt lighter with each signature. Glenn faced 18 months in prison. Catherine eventually accepted a plea agreement. Guilty to fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. 3 years supervised probation, a felony conviction, 500 hours community service, and $87,000 in restitution. Most crucially, she was legally disinherited, a court order stating she had no claim to my estate. I received the news with grim satisfaction. Not vengeance, but justice proportional to the crime. That evening, I sat alone in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Margaret and I had strategized, where I'd discovered the fraud, where we'd danced. I thought about the journey from hospital discharge to this moment. I'd lost a daughter, but she wasn't who I thought she was anyway. I'd gained clarity, autonomy, the respect of having stood up for myself. Most importantly, I'd gained Margaret. I called her. "Would you like to come over?" Not to plan or strategize, just to be here. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said. She arrived with wine in her overnight bag. "Thought I might stay," she said simply. I took the bag from her hand, set it inside the door. I'd like that. 2 weeks passed like a slow exhale after holding your breath for years. Margaret officially moved in, her belongings mixing with mine in a way that felt natural, inevitable. We repainted rooms together, chose new furniture, hung photographs of us at the coast, at the mountains, living the life I'd been too busy surviving to enjoy. My attorney finalized my new will. The house and my assets would go to charity, specifically to organizations supporting elder abuse victims. I'd found my purpose in the pain. Late August afternoon, Margaret and I sat in rocking chairs on the front porch, new additions we'd chosen together. The house behind us showed signs of life. Curtains in the windows, flowers in pots, warm light spilling from inside. "What are your plans for today?" Margaret asked. "I thought I'd work on the memoir a few hours," I said. "Maybe tackle that garden bed this afternoon. I have the advocacy center in the morning. 2 new clients dealing with financial exploitation. I want to be back by 3 for our walk." "Our walk," I said, smiling. "I like that it's become a routine." "Good routines," Margaret replied. "The kind we choose, not the kind we're trapped in." Exactly that. I met with Finch one final time, not for battle, but for closure. He presented the executed documents. Helen's disinheritance recorded. My new will notarized and filed. The restitution payment plan formalized. "How do you feel now that it's all finished?" he asked. "Resolved," I said. "Not satisfied. That seems too victorious, but resolved." They faced proportional consequences. I didn't seek their destruction, only justice. "You're one of the few clients I've had who understood that difference," Finch said. "Most people want revenge, disguised as justice." "Revenge would have meant trying to destroy them beyond what they deserved," I replied. "Justice meant holding them accountable for what they actually did." "There's a line, and I tried to walk it." Finch extended his hand. "You succeeded." "Good luck, Sterling." It was the first time he'd used my first name. That evening, Margaret hosted a small gathering. People from the Senior Support Center. Finch and his wife, Mrs. Patterson, arriving nervous. "Sterling, I wanted to say again how sorry I am," she said. "I thought I was helping." "You were trying to help," I replied gently. "You were manipulated like I was. I don't hold it against you." After the guests left, Margaret and I returned to the porch. We talked about plans. A trip to Europe next spring. I'd always wanted to see Rome. Margaret wanted Paris. "Art classes at the community center," I said. "Volunteer work with elder advocacy groups." "So, Rome in the spring?" Margaret asked. "Are you serious?" "Completely. I've wanted to see the Colosseum since I was teaching Roman history. Never had time. Never had reason. Now I have both. We're really doing this. Building a life together." "That's not a question, is it?" I asked. "That's a statement. A statement I like saying out loud. Making it real. It's real," I said. "You're here. I'm here. This is real." We sat in comfortable silence. Then I asked, "Do you think about Catherine?" "Helen?" "Sometimes," Margaret replied. Do you? Less often than I expected. When I do, it's not anger anymore. It's just sad, like mourning someone who died, except they didn't die. They just never existed the way I thought. That's grief, too, Margaret said. Valid grief, I know. I'm working through it. But here's the thing. I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret any of it. If I'd let Catherine take control, I'd be in a nursing home right now. Or worse. Instead, I'm here with you. You saved yourself, Margaret said softly. That's what I love about you. You learned to fight for your own life. I paused. What you love about me? Yes, what I love. Is that okay? That's more than okay. As the sun set, we sat close, her head on my shoulder. Inside, the house glowed with warm light, visible from the street, a beacon of life and warmth. I thought this house would be my tomb, I said quietly. Instead, it's my beginning. Margaret lifted her head, looked directly at me. Our beginning, I smiled, nodded. Our beginning. I want this to work, she said. Us? It already is working. We're already here. This is it working, I laughed. That simple. That simple. We choose each other every day. That's all love is. We sat as darkness fell. I wasn't afraid of the night because we'd face it together. The house was mine. The life was mine. And the woman beside me had chosen to be here. That was the greatest victory of all. If you connected with this story, please like and subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what resonated with you. To experience the next story, click the featured video. Thank you for watching.